Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World with me, John Jordan. So not quite halfway through the year, but basically this is going to be my sort of presentation for what's been going on in the blockchain game sector for sort of almost the first half of 2023. So I'm going to cover a bunch of stuff, a bunch of data, and then look at some sort of trends as well. Okay, so first thing is sort of headline stuff, which I guess is sort of the sort of big sort of the big sort of crypto news in general, nothing to do with games in particular, that happened over the last sort of week, and that is the SEC has finally announced all these lawsuits. So we've all had lots of fun on Twitter with these sort of memes and the whole whole thing going on there. I mean, sort of seriously, the Binance one is probably is going to be, I guess, the more interesting one. That's 156 pages, so bigger than the Coinbase one. And in a sense, that's sort of potentially the more serious one, at least for Binance or Binance.us or whatever they're calling it, in terms of they're saying sort of commingling of funds and sort of people, the sort of Binance itself trading against its own users, blah blah blah. So I'm not my area of expertise at all, but that seems the more serious one. And they've the SEC also filed to sort of basically sort of pause any activity on Binance.us because they say they're worried the funds are going to get taken, all that sort of stuff. So we'll see what happens on that. Coinbase is, I guess, in a sense, more interesting in the broad crypto scheme of things, in the sense that Coinbase are a public company in the US, having gone through an IPO process that was cleared by the SEC. So, that's a sort of slightly embarrassing for the SEC that from what you can see from the outside, a well-regulated US company that has been given approval to IPO its stock on the American Stock Exchange by the SEC and hasn't really changed its model in that period of time, is now sort of getting sued for running illegal securities. So I think in that sense, Coinbase, that's not a surprise. The Binance one isn't a surprise either. We know these are coming for a long time. So sort of in a sense, there's relief that this is out in the open. And I think from Coinbase's point of view, they're just like, we've always tried to be as compliant as possible. We've always, focused on that sort of stuff. We've not, there's stuff we haven't done for that reason. And they definitely feel the SEC is not giving crypto a sort of a fair, it's not a level playing field, particularly under this sort of administration, under the Biden administration. They've taken a very different view, the Democrats, compared to previous administrations and what their view of crypto was. And really, I think in generally the crypto market would quite like to be regulated. It wouldn't like bad regulation, but at the moment it's sort of, these are unregulated assets. So it's very difficult to if you are sort of a legal company who wants to be as legal as possible, you don't really know what to do because there's no guidance on any of this sort of stuff. Well, there's guidance, but there's no actual law. So hopefully, but at least by the end of this, probably will take months and years. And Coinbase has said they're going to take it to the Supreme Court as sort of fundamental right of US citizens to own their own digital property, I suppose. We'll see what pans out. I guess one sort of sideshow from this is that this is the price of ETH since December, and it's not. I guess there was some idea that when this was happening, everyone would just be like, "Oh, gracious, we're going to get out of crypto." So the price is up from what it was a low in December. So people were thinking, is it going to go under $1,000? In December, it didn't. It stayed about 1,200, and now it's about $1,800. And obviously, there's sort of movement every day, but it's not like the SEC came in and sued these people, and the whole market's dropped 30%. The BNB chain, the BNB token is down a little bit because the Binance suit, but ETH, is not there. I mean, Coinbase's stock is down, but in terms of like ETH and broader crypto prices, they don't seem to be down. Apart from, as part of the SEC thing, they've said a whole bunch of tokens are securities. Interestingly, not ETH. So Bitcoin and ETH are now generally, I think it's pretty firm that under US law, those are not seen as securities. But other stuff has been now sort of not directly it's not like the SEC is directly going after Solana or any of these other tokens, but it has mentioned that they are securities, and that's sort of the Coinbase case is around these illegal securities. And in the game side, the AXI token, the AXS token, and the SAND token are two that were also mentioned sort of indirectly as being securities. So the prices definitely SAND is down, AXI token a bit as well. So there may be sort of, a bit of reaction there, down like 10-15%. But in terms of like, you'd say overall in the crypto market itself, sort of I think there's a sort of a in a sense almost like a satisfaction this process is happening. We'll see. Okay, so I'm going to look at a whole bunch of data here, but just say beware the McNamara fallacy. So the McNamara fallacy is named after the US Defense Secretary during the Vietnam War. Pretty famous guy. And sort of the McNamara fallacy is sort of defined as just because you can measure something doesn't mean that thing is significant or important. So I'm going to go through a whole bunch of data. I'm not saying actually that data is necessarily significant, but that's sort of something I'll discuss. But the McNamara fallacy was particularly around in the Vietnam War. The US Army had a whole thing about kill counts. How many enemy have they killed today? And that became like the key metric. But actually, you don't win wars necessarily by killing killing the opposition, because you can't kill sort of everyone. So it doesn't really matter how many you're killing. It sort of depends really how much ground you're holding and other factors, other more complex factors than just sort of killing the enemy. So that's sort of what we have to be a little bit aware of when we're discounting data. Is this data actually useful? Okay, so this is something I've banged on around for a long time. This is the looking at the on-chain data of a whole bunch of blockchain games. This is from DappRadar. So this is just looking every day. Look at the on-chain data, and how many wallets are interacting with the smart contracts making up these games. So this is for the last year and a half. So I guess the first thing, it's very messy, which is, I'm not going through individual games here. So you can just sort of see there's a lot of volatility. Stuff goes up and down all the time. Interestingly, we have some sort of peak. So we have a yellow peak, which is hooked at the end of 2022, and this sort of more recent one from Ishkar. So you get these massive peaks, which are normally when games launch or launch some sort of token event, and everyone sort of piles in, particularly a lot of bots, to see if they can make sort of easy money. And then either the token event stops, or people realize they can't make money, and the whole thing goes down again. So you get these. This is very sort of the volatility of these massive spikes and these massive sort of declines is just something that is part of crypto. So we still have that because there's obviously millions of wallets out there looking for free money. But in general, we've not really seen a growth, any growth at all really in the market. If you go back a bit, we sort of do see. I think this is sort of moving from the McNamara fallacy. Over a longer period of time, you get the significance coming out. So obviously, 2020 there was like nothing. The market, in terms of on-chain activity for these games, and some games are more on-chain than others. We have to say that. Some games, you just own NFTs and get access to the game. There may not be a lot of token interaction going on. Some games, everything's on-chain. But in 2022, the biggest games, 10,000 daily wallets. So nothing going on effectively. From 2021, we see the big sort of rise. So we have the rise of Alien Worlds in blue. We have the rise of Splinterlands in red, and then the rise of Axie Infinity towards the end of the year in green. So we have these, at least on that day, during that, as the year progressed there, you had 3 games that go into sort of over 200,000 daily active unique wallets. Obviously a bunch of bots in there, but you can sort of see that's the big explosion that happens. 2022, Axie goes right down, back down. Alien Worlds goes down a little bit, but sort of solidifies around 200,000, where it's been ever since. And Splinterlands comes down to sort of 300,000, then has this big drop down to under 100,000, which we discussed in the past when it changed its reward mechanism. So over the big scheme, we can sort of, we can see there is growth there, but sort of the growth happened in 2021, and it's sort of come down a bit since then, or at best sort of stayed where it is, and no other sort of big games have sort of come in. I mean, Hooked has sort of come in. It's not really a game. It's sort of like a sort of education game reward system. So 2020 and 2021 was when the big growth happened, and we've sort of been static since then. So I sort of plotted this out. If I combine all those games together, which is not necessarily a great sort of statistical way of doing it, but it's you sort of get some idea. Obviously, we sort of see the same thing. The big spike, a peak at the end of 2021. So over 3 million wallets or something in November. It sort of drops down a bit, and then we get sort of a spike in 2023 with this Ishkar launch. And then I sort of plotted it with a trailing 90-day average, so it just sort of smooths out some of the peaks there. And you sort of, again, not overplaying this, but when you see that, I think you sort of get, when I look at that graph, you sort of get a this is the Gartner hype cycle. So the Gartner hype cycle is you get a massive peak of inflated expectations, and then people sort of realize how this stuff works or how hard it is, and you get a the trough of disillusionment when in this case user numbers go down or value goes down, and then you get this sort of idea of the slope of enlightenment where people actually start working out how this stuff works. And then a plateau of productivity. That's sort of some idea about the hype. So it's not necessarily user numbers, because user numbers in the plateau of productivity, your user numbers will be going up at that stage. So from the trough of disillusionment, you don't have many users, and then the slope of enlightenment is actually when sort of you get these hockey stick growth curves. So we're not there yet. We haven't got the growth, but you get some idea that obviously we've gone through the peak, and it's sort of what we're looking for now is whether this year or next year we start to have some enlightenment going on. So this, I was looking at this is the ETH price. This is not normalized, so I've sort of at the start of 2020, I've normalized the ETH price in dollars and the number of on-chain activities with those games, just to see where the growth is. So we can see in 2020 there is growth. It's a log graph. So from the start of 2020 to 2021, the ETH price and the number of people playing blockchain games actually goes up 5 times. But then we see in 2022 the price of ETH goes up, maybe 30-fold compared to what it was in the start of 2020. But the game growth happens, much more rapidly, and we're into the sort of 300, 400 times the growth. So that's where the big growth happens, and you sort of always. The price of ETH is sort of a economic function, whereas as many people as possible can play games, so you sort of get higher growth on the games. And then so again, it's just looking at these sort of these patterns of sort of growth, and looking at really 2021 was the year all that sort of stuff happened, and since then we haven't really seen very much. We've seen sort of steadying. 2022 was you could argue it wasn't actually that low. It wasn't actually a sort of a very deep slough of despond, of disillusionment. Obviously, things can always go down again, but it looks like we're sort of in a more solid state now, and hopefully building. And that's sort of what we'll look at as we get into the trends. Okay, and this is sort of what my overall sort of personal view, is what's going on here is the sort of price of these assets, it's obviously driven mainly by speculation. Obviously, people would argue there are some fundamentals around what the ETH price is worth. You can make that case, but basically, you don't worry too much about that. You just look at sort of innovation. Innovation happens on a more sort of steady sort of growth line, while the price will go sort of up and down, driven maybe by some underlying fundamentals or sort of innovation, I guess. And obviously the big thing for ETH last year was it went from proof of work to proof of stake, and sort of nothing bad happened at all, and sort of no one noticed. But that was a massive technological change, so that's sort of underlying innovation. And I think there's innovation in terms of sort of people building stuff, particularly in the game side. Okay, let's look at some more data. So this is active traders on NFT platforms. So this is nothing to do with gaming per se, but what is interesting here is this is not the volumes of NFT trading, so that's down quite a lot. But if you actually look at the number of wallets, so you could have some idea of the number of people, I suppose people have more than one wallet maybe. But you're still up over 100,000 wallets. Looks like that's on a weekly basis. Big spike when the Blur airdrop happens. So again, it's sort of the same volatility we see with games. If something's happening where you can get free money, everyone sort of piles into it. And we have 500,000 wallets acting then, or traders. Not quite sure how they're working traders and wallets there, but you sort of see there is a spike. It has come down, but in terms of sort of underlying usage, people are still interested in this stuff, even if the pricing around the assets they're buying is much reduced. I'm looking at NFT collection. So this is from Crypto Slam. So this is over a month. So still, in a sense, we're seeing the sort of usual suspects. So a lot of stuff has dropped away, but the sort of the top collections are now really sort of solidified. So Bored Ape and Mutant Ape definitely have sort of survived. Crypto Punks, who are not shown on this, but because complicated standard stuff. But Crypto Punks obviously there as well. As Azuki is interesting. That's sort of the one that's come through the bear market. So there were a whole bunch of other stuff, sort of Doodles and Clonex and Moonbirds. They've all fallen away. They're priced much lower. But Azuki is the one that's actually sort of come through there and has actually held up its price pretty well. So other interesting thing to look at is we have DMarket. So DMarket is actually a CS:GO skins trading marketplace. So I don't actually quite know if those, whether we should count those as NFTs. It's got quite a lot of volume, so $37 million worth of trading on that. But those are not sort of proper NFTs in that way. So DMarket has been a CS:GO skins trading platform for a long time, and then Mythical Games bought it and put it on their Mythic platform. So it is, I guess, to some degree running on sort of a private blockchain, I suppose, but it's not. Those are not native NFTs on there. The other thing that I just mentioned better on this slide is, nothing to do with games, but really the rise of Bitcoin as a platform where people are sticking NFTs. So these audials, various forms of sort of tech. You can see here these uncategorized audials, and then the audial NFTs, the BRC20 standard. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on Bitcoin, which actually now makes it the second largest blockchain in terms of trading volume of NFTs, which is interesting. Whether that lasts, I don't know. I mean, sort of like a technological sort of wheeze that they've sort of hack that they've done. And a lot of the Bitcoin core people don't like it because they don't think Bitcoin should be running NFTs on it, but people are doing it. Not an enormous number of people compared to Ethereum. So 11,000 active wallets compared to 71,000. But we'll see how that plays out. So investment in the blockchain game sector, something I look at quite a lot, broken down. So this is over sort of 3 years, bits of 3 years. They're very small at the moment. So looking at sort of $200-300 million of investment per month, down from some months over $1 billion. So down 80%, you could say. That's obviously because early 2022 was sort of crazy times. I think we sort of knew that at the time, but we've seen sort of the macro change, the sort of the war in Ukraine, and sort of inflation, and sort of China and its sort of economy, and then sort of the globalization stuff between the US and China. There's a whole bunch of sort of uncertainty, and sort of interest rates and banks going bust, and then sort of worry about real estate pricing, and sort of recessions in various countries. So Germany's in recession. People think America will be in recession. We'll wait and see. But not fun times economically. So when those sort of things happen, there's not lots of free money floating around. Obviously, things change. But anyway, it's still investment is happening there. Again, sort of, if I put the price, this is the ETH price. Put it on there, line it up. You can sort of see some similar sort of trends. This is the number of blockchain game investments. So this is the number, not the amount. So actually, in terms of the number of investments, still actually sort of fairly decent. So still sort of 20-ish deals. So this is into blockchain games, metaverse, NFT, sort of stuff around entertainment. Obviously down a lot from the sort of the 40 we were seeing a year ago, but still it's not zero. And this is so this is looking at blockchain. This is sort of blockchain game cryptocurrencies, so tokens. So I track about 170 of those, and this is just looking at the performance in 2023. So half are down, half are up. A few are up, fairly significantly. This is from the 1st of January, so almost 6 months. So some of this stuff is clearly speculation. Some of the ones that have gone up quite a lot are sort of ones that we would know, sort of the particularly the Ronin token from Sky Mavis has done pretty well. The Dust token from the DGods project, NFT project that moved to Ethereum, has done pretty well. But some things have just sort of done okay because they were generally everything was at a low in December, so just because the market conditions have come back to a degree, sort of Bitcoin and Ether up sort of 50% year on year over that 6 month period. Sorry, I should say, but equally, even in that sort of slightly more positive period, 50% have lost value. And that's because we sort of expect that. We know 99.9% of blockchain game projects are going to go to zero. So not a great surprise to see. Maybe the surprise is that there's not more of them have gone lower. And actually, if we look at the lifetime performance of those blockchain tokens, we can see only 10 of those tokens have done better than 100%. Obviously, again, we're at the bottom of the market. So if the market sort of doubled, then this would be, obviously these numbers would change. But it's sort of generally my view on blockchain sort of projects is that the majority are just whether the teams are experienced or not experienced. Obviously, the less experience they have, the more likely they are to go to zero. But even experienced teams, are going to fail. That's just sort of the nature of startups. And when you put blockchain in there as well, the volatility and the complexity of dealing with these things is just super difficult. And blockchain is definitely a winner takes all. Most markets are a winner takes all, but blockchain in particular because of the network effects. So 10 of these tokens have done more than doubled their money. This is over a time period of sort of when they started getting listing on CoinGecko. So some of these tokens will have done much better if you were the sort of a first early stage investor into the private round. Would have done better than that. But this is sort of broadly looking at sort of, I guess, public markets. And the ones that have done really well, the ones that have done the thousands of percent, are the sandboxes, the Axes, the Gala games, those sort of bigger projects. I think Magic, Ultra. Those are ones that have sort of been successful, even though they may be now down 95%, 96% from their all-time highs. They're still up 1,000%. So that's sort of this winner takes all thing. If you bought Axie at the top of the market, you're down 96%. But if you bought Axie as soon as it was sort of announced, you're up 4,000%. So in this sort of view, timing is everything. Okay, so another little meme here. So this is because one of the sort of jobs I do is looking at blockchain game investments, and when we do that, we treat that very seriously. We don't just sort of invest in projects we like. We think seriously about everything about the project, and particularly about the valuation of that product. Why is that project valued at a certain amount of money? And blockchain doesn't make projects more valuable. I don't think. It probably makes some of them less valuable. This is just some ways of thinking about sort of investments. And what I've done here is I've looked at two DAOs, sort of investment DAOs. So there's Perion and Merit Circle. And both of those sort of started out in the era of sort of Axie Infinity, when there's lots of guilds being launched and sort of scholarships, and play to earn was a big thing, and everyone was onboarding people to Axie, and Axie NFTs were very expensive. So you needed these sort of companies who had raised capital to then buy the NFTs to onboard the scholars, and the scholars earn the tokens, and there's a sort of they were breeding more Axies, flywheel going on. The problem was, obviously Axie went up and then Axie went down again. So Perion is currently has about $10 million worth of assets, has its own token, it has a market cap of about $2 million. To be fair to them, they put out public numbers. So this is don't have any secret information here. This is just that they put this out every quarter or so. They put out a big list of their investments. And I just looked at taking a sort of snapshot of some of their NFTs in this case, and this shows here. So in red, it's showing how much they paid for those NFTs at the start, and now it's in green above. It shows the value of those NFTs now. So you can see they spent $600,000 buying Axie NFTs, which are now worth a very small amount. And they spent whatever it was, I can't remember. What's that going to be? $350,000 buying Zrun NFTs, which are now worth $250,000. So they've lost money on those. So you can sort of see. But basically, this is all sort of to do with market timing a little bit. But they lost. They spent $1.45 million buying NFTs, and the current value of those collections is under $600,000. So the return on investment is minus 62%. Some of them have done, supposedly on this pricing, I'm not quite sure, but taking the numbers at face value. So they've spent a little bit on God's Unchained and made money on those. The value of those has gone up, and the same on Ember Sword. although MSO's not live yet. But the sort of the profit they've made on those is dwarfed by the fact they've lost all the money on Axie. So when it comes to investment, the serious bit here is sort of always what the project you choose is serious, but also the amount you invest always needs to be serious. So as we'll see, investing in the right project is always a good starting point, but you need to invest the most in the best projects. So Merit Circle is much more serious. It's a much bigger outfit and has sort of grown and actually very quickly it sort of moved out from being an Axie sort of a guild, and now does investment, and it's making its own game, and it has its own infrastructure and a whole bunch of stuff it's doing. So it has about 100 million. So it has $96 million worth of assets at the moment. I mean, they have a live dashboard. You can go and see exactly what they own. So I've done exactly the same thing here. I've looked at their NFT investments and the sort of live. So these are live NFTs. And again, they spent $3.1 million. They spent $2 million on Axie Infinity NFTs, which are now not worth very much at all. So their current value of their entire collection, or this collection here, is just over $850,000. So return on investment of minus 73%, even worse than Perion in terms of NFTs. So pretty much all the things they invested in have gone down in value. Merit Circles also has a whole bunch of token investments, so a bit more positive here that they invested $2.3 million in tokens. Current value of those is $1.7 million, so return on investment is still down, but they only lost 29% on that. And the interesting thing here is Magic. So Magic is the underlying token for the Tether DAO ecosystem. They invested $150,000 in that, and it actually, the value of that token is now up sort of 7 times. So this goes back to sort of what we call ticket allocation, or a sort of allocation of a portfolio. So they had one really big hit, really. So Magic is a big hit, but they didn't. If they'd invested $300,000 into Magic, then they would be positive over the entire portfolio. But because they invested a lot into some of these other projects that have done very badly, then the fact they had one hit isn't enough in monetary, in absolute terms. So the sort of percentage increase is great, but there's not enough invested in that in an absolute term. So when you think about serious investments, and I wouldn't say personally I'm a serious investor, but when you put a serious investor hat on, it's not just picking the right project. It's thinking seriously about how much you put into them, and a little bit about when you put it into them as well. But for something like Magic, if you see it sort of taking off, the sort of the retrospective counterfactual here will be, let's get more money into it when we can see it's doing well, and maybe let's sell some of these other ones out sort of quicker. But easy to say in hindsight. So put it all together. If you combine both these projects, they spent almost $7 million buying NFTs and tokens, and the current value of those portfolios is $3 million. So they've sort of lost over 50% of their money. And I would say, for most investors in the blockchain game sector over the last sort of year, I think you see something sort of similar there. Certainly for NFTs that I own, which is not an enormous amount, this is something similar. So I don't think anyone, there are probably a few genius people who just invested in Azuki. They've done okay, but for everyone else, we've not been serious enough. Let's put it that way. Okay, so let's look at the number of titles out there, number of blockchain games. So this is from April, from the big blockchain game list. So there we had 945 games had been listed on the big blockchain game list. 21% had been discontinued. So we're going to see that number rise clearly as projects don't find product market fit and they run out of money. So that number could rise quite a lot. Still a whole bunch in development. So around half are in development. Quite a lot live, so 24% of that number is live. And then most anticipated is sort of the sort of 50 or so games that I think are sort of the best quality ones. So that's sort of my little sort of a curated list of ones I think are good. So it's actually quite a small number of projects. Obviously, most anticipated ones are not really live yet, although there's always a debate. Some things are in sort of closed betas, or when's the game actually live? Who knows? But there is a small sort of cohort of games that I'm really focused on to see which ones of those will be the breakout. Also worth looking at the number of games we've added. So since February, we've added 221 games to the big list. So it's just quite a lot of stuff still out there, and particularly we've broken this down by the blockchains that they're on. And I think that's a big surprising trend, really, is, as certainly on Ethereum, we've seen a lot of sort of scaling solutions. So Arbitrum is one of those using optimistic rollups. We're seeing a lot of announcements around ZK rollup, so a more complex technology, but with some advantages there. So IMX Immutable X did a deal with Polygon to use their ZK rollup solution. So we'll start to see some games on that. So a whole bunch of that sort of scaling stuff, and then a whole bunch of new blockchains. So the Sui blockchain, totally different, not EVM compatible. They announced their first games. And then we have the old favorites: Polygon, BNB, Avalanche, Wax. Still games being announced for that. And then we have the South Korean, so Clayton and Intella X, which actually runs on Polygon, but that's the blockchain for NeoWix, and WeMix is the blockchain for WeMade. So they announced a whole bunch of games, sort of 40 games that they announced. So a whole bunch of sort of these individual games companies, particularly from South Korea, sort of launching their own sort of blockchain scaling solutions and announcing games for those. And obviously we have some stuff is multi-chain, some stuff is on some other blockchains that we haven't added here, and a whole bunch still not announced their blockchain. So there is a lot of blockchain games out there still in development, still working, and there's a whole bunch of blockchains trying to sort of get those games to launch on them, and sort of there's new blockchains sort of coming along almost every day, really, or certainly different sort of L2 scaling solutions. So there's still, this is the expansion phase. Expansion phase for sort of blockchain gaming technology. We're not in consolidation. That will come clearly. Not all these blockchains are going to survive, but we're still in that sort of early explosion phase. Okay, some other trends. Distribution is a big one. So the Epic Game Store is sort of the big PC game distribution platform that allows blockchain games. So Steam does not at the moment. Doesn't allow games that have NFTs in them. But Epic Game Store does. It doesn't have sort of native wallet integration or anything like that, but you can distribute the games through there. So this is 25 games. Most of these are not live yet. This sort of says coming soon, but some of them are live. So what have we got? Grit's live. Obviously Blancos is live. The core sort of ecosystem where you can build your own games has some products live in there. Cards of Eternity is live. Knights of Cathania is live. I think that's a card game. So we're just seeing more of these games coming live. Not sure, quite what the quality of some of these products is going to be. But stuff is being released. Worlds Eternal Online is one to watch. It's actually that is available on other app stores as well. Actually, obviously Star Atlas has some playable stuff in there as well, not the full game. So there is this number of games is increasing all the time, and there is an argument you need to be on some of these big distribution platforms in order to get the big numbers. Metalcore, I guess, is sort of one people are looking at coming in November this year. And equally, we're also seeing this on app stores. This is from the Apple App Store, and there's a lot going on with mobile, probably more than on PC at the moment, and that's partly because we're starting to see Apple formally allow NFT games on the App Store. I mean, there's always been NFT games on the App Store, certainly on Google Play. But how you sort of formally do that is sort of still being worked out. But Across the Ages is a trading card game, and they're just showing here. I don't know how much marketing they necessarily spent, but in terms of the card genre, here they were number 1 in Australia, number 2 in France, and number 20 in Japan. It's a free to play game. The blockchain is in there, but not sort of front and foremost. You don't need NFTs to play the game. So people are looking now to use the App Store as a sort of leverage distribution platform. And sort of the big news recently was around Stepan, and it was one of the first games to use Apple Pay. So this is me buying a NFT in Stepan on iOS using their new in-game currency called Spark. And you buy Spark using in-app purchases, using Apple Pay, using your credit card, and then you can use Spark to buy an NFT. So the NFT marketplace that will be on, say, Magic Eden, or it is the universal marketplace that people are trading Stepan NFTs is in the iOS app, and you're buying that. I mean, it's 40% markup for various reasons. Obviously, Apple could take 30%, but you're sort of using in-app purchases to get that NFT, and then you can use that in the app, and then you can also sell that NFT in the marketplace, and you get the cryptocurrency that you can then sort of take out of your app from there. So it's sort of baby steps, I suppose, but we are definitely seeing that. Okay. Also, so not a lot of detail on this one, but EA Sports is doing a integration with Nike Swoosh. So some of the digital assets in the Nike Swoosh sort of ecosystem will be available, integrated in EA Sports games. So not in the actual sort of gameplay, but just on the sort of customization sides. So you can imagine if you had, a pair of sneakers in Swoosh, then you could have sometimes, maybe have those in your avatar could use those in EA Sports game. We'll see. And this is sort of interesting that they're not expensive assets. This is more like a sort of a collab, an IP collab, rather than EA Sports selling NFTs or anything like that. But that's again baby steps. Blanco's Block Party and Prime Gaming. So they already did this in 2022. There was a free Blancos that you got if you were a Prime Amazon Prime user, and you connected your Prime account to your Blancos account. You got a free NFT, and now they've announced sort of 6 events over the next 6 months, giving away free stuff in Blanco's Block Party for Prime members. Obviously, Prime Gaming has been doing this for years in non-blockchain games, but we're starting to see sort of more of that happening. So most anticipated stuff. So these are my most anticipated sort of list, and say there's about 50 games that are on there. There's a whole bunch of stuff. They obviously all have their own sort of roadmaps. The sandbox supposedly is going to be sort of fully live, and people can make their own stuff and put it on, get it on chain, and get other people to play that before the end of the year. But last year there was 1.3 million client downloads. So that's people. You need to download the game effectively. 56,000 people using the game maker side of things. So that's how you make these sort of little experiences that then can be minted onto the blockchain, and then other people can experience. So that's sort of the equivalent to Roblox. That's the sort of this is the people who are making little experiences, or could be big experiences. So we have Hunters on Chain going live on the Polygon SuperNet. So that's a sort of scaling solution. We're starting to see those first games going live. Legions and Legends has its first playable. Probably won't be NFT stuff in there, but that's the end of the year. Blocklords community betas just finished now. That's the first playable we had of that. Nitro Nations World Tour NFT cars happening now. NFT Rivals. These are both mobile games from Mythical Games. That's live, although they're not doing the NFTs in the app yet. Off the Grid is a sort of shooter, pretty high-end game. It's launching on consoles this year, they say. Gods Unchained is launching its mobile version. There's a whole bunch of other stuff which is, I think, making games is hard, and I think a lot of blockchain projects, even experienced ones, sort of, because blockchain community tends to be about sort of what we call building openly. So a lot of Web 2 games, you might have a 5-year roadmap, and you don't really announce the game until sort of a year to go, and then you have a very structured sort of product release cycle, or the information release cycle is very sort of secure, very controlled. Blockchain games are all over the place from sort of the get-go, and sometimes you have problems with that. So Guild of Guardians has basically totally redesigned its genre, totally redesigned the artwork. It's now working with an outsourcing team, so basically that game is delayed by a year. Star Atlas obviously very ambitious, still building out, probably will be another couple of years. But other things are sort of moving sort of slowly. So Champions Ascension just had this big boss raid with this big crocodile. People are trying to kill. People like Dead Drop are doing their regular play test. The Goals game has its first playable alphas. So there's stuff's happening sort of all the time. But I think obviously, things are just sort of much slower than once you actually get to the stage of making a game, you realise it takes probably 6 months longer than you thought, and that's standard for games, and blockchain adds complexity as well. So I think, so at the start of 2023, I sort of thought we'd have more sort of product formally out than we currently have. Obviously, we've still got 6 months to go, and we have some big ones particularly the Sandbox. I think is really one to look at, and I'm personally quite interested in Nitro Nation as well, and Off the Grid. If it is on consoles this year, that'd be pretty impressive. So sort of plenty to look forward to, but a lot of other things have been pushed out into 2024. So that's where we are. There's, I think it's always a little bit of jam tomorrow, which always worries me a bit. But I guess for the year we've been through, you do need time to sort of consolidate, and making games is difficult, and funding is not where it was last time, so that just slows everything down. But I still think the thing we mustn't forget is the sort of blockchains are getting better all the time. The sort of the tools around making games and blockchain games are getting better. The onboarding solutions are getting better. It's still a big part of education, but really what we're looking for is a couple of projects. Maybe Sandbox is a key one really for the end of the year, but a few other ones as well, where just they have a high profile project that can onboard more than tens of thousands of people, and get people sort of starting to understand what a digital asset is. Maybe we don't call them NFTs, and get to understand why you would have a token and what a token actually means. Is it just a speculative item, or might you actually, how would it feed into a game economy where we're sort of very used to having sort of currencies in games that we use to level up or speed things up, or buy gadget boxes or that sort of stuff, and how blockchain sort of suddenly can sort of feed into that. I think that does take time, but I think you have a sort of games are an education in how to play games, and also how to interact with blockchain. That will be what blockchain games will do. So we're still looking for those projects to sort of take off and take us to the next level. And I'll be keeping an eye on that. So please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.